Today, we're having an in-depth look at one of my e-commerce clients, a 7-figure clothing brand in the UK. I'm going to show you exactly how I increased their new customer return on ad spend from 2.6 in June and July to 3.59 in August when I started mid-month to 7.6 in September when I started actively managing the account. A 190% increase compared to June and July. I'll also show you how I dropped their new customer cost per acquisition from 22.7 down to 8.2, a 64% decrease in cost per new customer. Over the course of June, July, and August, they averaged a return or profit of £883, while in September, when we started actively working on the account, we did £8,300 in profit, a 940% increase in profits. Not only were we acquiring customers profitably at scale now in September, but we also changed the way in which this clothing brand released new designs. And we were able to generate the highest revenue weekend outside of Black Friday, Cyber Monday ever for this business, doing 30K in revenue over the course of a single weekend. I'm going to show you exactly what went wrong in their Google and Facebook ad accounts and why, even though they were doing 6 figures per month, they only had a profit margin of 0.5%. By implementing these changes as a business owner, you can make twice the amount of money or profits you are currently making, or as this business owner, even 9 times as much without having to do more. So here is what we are going to cover. What vital mistakes did the former ad agency make in their Facebook and Google accounts that cost them close to £10,000 per month in profit and wasted ad spend, and how they made it seem like the results were great when in reality they were not. Secondly, I'm going to show you exactly what changes I made that enabled them to go from profiting only £840 per month, which is like a 0.5% margin, to profit $8,300 in just a single month at $89,000 in sales for a profit margin of 9%, a huge jump in profitability. Lastly, I'm going to show you why we changed the design strategy or the release strategy and how we were able to generate $30,000 in revenue in just a single weekend with a 10 new customer return on ad spend, making this their biggest revenue weekend outside of Black Friday, Cyber Monday ever. Stick around and you won't just get another framework or theoretical approach to running your business, but I'll actually show you the proof, the data, and everything that went on in the back end so that you can apply it today to increase your business, its cash flow and profits, hopefully substantially. Now, let's dive into the mistakes that this agency made in the Facebook account as well as the Google account. As part of my 30-page research document, I also do an in-depth review of the Facebook and Google account. In June and July, when the business was struggling to make profits, the combined ad spend was £43,000. Now, there's a crucial concept to touch upon before we go further, and that is the way in which we use paid media, such as paid traffic from Facebook and Google. The key to paid acquisition is to acquire a new customer. Not just to acquire any customer, but a new customer. Once you've paid to acquire a first-time customer, you strive to never pay for a returning order again. People will buy from you a second time based on how valuable your product is relative to its cost. If your product sucks, they won't come back, no matter how many ads you throw at them. But if your product is the best thing that they've ever experienced in their lifetime, they'll come back even if you never run ads or never email them again. I'll even prove this to you with data. In June and July, the former ad agency spent $35,000 or actually close to 36,000 on Facebook, generating 1,450 purchases, from which 870 were new customer purchases. That means 40% of the entire ad spend was spent on returning customers. That's £14,000 being wasted on returning customers. Let's look at our data to support this. What you see here are the returning orders for June, July, August, and September. The order volume floats at around 1,000 orders consistently, and the net sales volumes at around 40,000. But here's the surprise. In August, we only spent 12,000, or actually closer to 13,000 on paid media, and in September, we only spent 5,000. So while the ad spend decreased by as much as £18,000, our returning order levels remained equal and our profits soared with us. This proves to us that spending money on returning customers is often a waste of advertising budget. What you want to do instead is move these audiences from your paid channels to your own channels, such as email, where it's virtually free to contact them. The only time I'm willing to spend a portion of my advertising budget on returning customers is when there's a big event or promotion on the calendar and I want everyone in the entire world to know about it. But even then, I'm super cautious of not spending too much. Now, the most important question to ask is, how do we prevent wasting our money on returning customers? The easiest way to do this is by adding exclusions to your Facebook account. By simply going into the ad set, creating a custom audience of your Facebook engagers, your Instagram engagers, your website visitors, and your past 60-day customers, you can exclude them and solve this problem. If you don't have exclusions in your Facebook account, and I see this over and over and over again, you are wasting money on returning customers, as much as 40% as you saw from these calculations. If you simply cut this wasted spend by adding your exclusions, you've now decreased your cost per new customer by 40%. Even after going from 24,000 in ad spend a month to 5,000 in ad spend per month, an 80% decrease, the net returning customer sales or order revenue remained exactly the same. However, there were more major errors in this ad account that the former agency was unaware of or reluctant to share with the client. Now that we have established that the primary purpose of paid acquisition is to acquire new customers, we can assess whether this was done effectively. The new customer cost per acquisition, as indicated here as NCCPA, was £41.03. And the new customer average order value, or NCAOV, was 58.88 cents. I did extensive research on the brand, its margins, by going through their invoices and their P&L sheets. By running the numbers, I knew that at this rate, they were losing £5.96 on every new customer that they acquired through Facebook. The former agency failed to acquire customers at a profitable rate when the client had expressed a need for cash on hand. The media buying was making matters worse. They were losing cash and capital. So it was no wonder that at £123,000 in revenue in June, they were only profiting £49. But how did this remain undetected? Well, unethical or incompetent agencies and freelancers present the statistics in a manner that's favorable to them, as if things are going extremely well. Take a look at this image. The return on ad spend is 5.21. Not bad at all. So that's what the agency reports on. We're doing great at a 5.2 ROAS on ad spend, and these stats are great for a business in your niche, is what they tell the client. However, they fail to mention that the return on ad spend is based on all the orders in Shopify, not just new orders, but returning orders and draft orders as well. Now we've shown undeniable proof that the ad spend did not contribute to the net sales of returning orders. I cut back the ad spend by £19,000, an 80% decrease, and nothing happened to the returning order revenue. However, this agency is including all of the sales, the new orders, the returning orders, and draft orders into their return on ad spend from the advertisements. At this point, it doesn't even matter if they did it intentionally or unintentionally. This was creating a disaster. What they should have reported on is the new customer return on ad spend, which store-wide was a 2.6 and not a 5.2. They were doing the same thing on channel-specific statistics. Instead of focusing on new customer statistics, they included returning orders as well. And because they didn't use any exclusions in the ad account, Facebook and Google were over-reporting like crazy. Even a software like Triple Whale won't filter out these over-attributed sales if you're setting yourself up for failure in the ad account by not having proper exclusions. Instead of telling the client the Facebook ROAS is only 1.44 and the new customer cost per acquisition is 41, which is why we're losing money, they reported on the 2.35 return on ad spend and the £24.64 CPA. Even those inflated numbers are barely breaking even. The agency set targets that were way too low because they didn't calculate the margins correctly, and that's what caused this business from being a healthy 7-figure business to a business desperate for cash, even when they're doing 6-figure months. Before we dive into the Google account, let's summarize these learnings. Strive to only pay for the first time order. Always add exclusions to your top of funnel campaigns to prevent over attribution and wasting money. When analyzing the performance of your paid acquisition or paid media, always look at your new customer statistics and don't include your returning orders. If you include your returning orders, your numbers become inflated and you'll wonder why you don't have any cash in the bank while your numbers look so great. So don't do it. Now, let's look at Google, another account from which we can learn a lot. First and foremost, we can see that the new customer return on ad spend is only 1.12, and the new customer cost per acquisition is as high as £51.90. This means that every new customer that came in through Google generated a loss in profits of £17.57. Do this often enough and you simply bleed out. Now, when looking at the individual campaigns, we can see that £6,000 over the course of 2 months went to the top of funnel performance campaign or PMAX campaign. Instantly, this gave me a bad feeling because a performance max campaign does not allow you to exclude existing website visitors, returning customers, or branded search terms. In other words, a performance max campaign will over attribute a lot of sales. We can see that from the 400 purchases, only 112 purchases were new customers, indicated as NCP. Let me repeat that. The agency called this a top of funnel campaign, while only 28% of the purchases were actually new customers, or top of funnel customers if you want to call it that. Now, again, we can see how a mistake like this is covered up by either intentionally or unintentionally reporting the wrong numbers. In green, you can see the inflated numbers that include the over-attributed returning orders. In red, you see the numbers for new customer statistics, the numbers that matter when you do paid media. The agency reported on a top of funnel cost per acquisition of £15 when in reality it was £54 on the top of funnel campaign. Instead of showing the client that the new customer return on ad spend was 1.08, they reported on the inflated 3.76 return on ad spend. That's what's causing this business to only take home £1,400 from £215,000 in revenue, a mere 0.65% return, not even a 1% margin in 2 months. The business is bleeding cash flow because although the ads were not contributing to the bottom line, the ad spend was cranked up to £43,000 during those 2 months, literally burning cash on hand and fueling losses. Now, I'm going to show you exactly what went on inside these Google campaigns that caused these problems and how I was able to cut the monthly ad spend on Google from £3,800 per month to £880 per month, while increasing the new customer return on ad spend from a very unprofitable 1.08 to a 15% profit on every new customer, so first time customer, at a 3.5 new customer return on ad spend. This cut of £3,000 in ad spend only lowered the new customer purchases by 20 orders. That means the new customer cost per acquisition on those 20 orders that we lost by cutting the spend was 3,000, right? The amount that we saved divided by 20, which means that the cost per acquisition on those customers that we lost by cutting the ad spend was 150 per customer. So in the end, we did get fewer new customers, right? Because we got 20 new customers less, but we also saved £3,000 in ad spend, and we were cutting the new customers that were costing us £150 per customer. Now, let's look at the individual campaigns inside of Google to see what's happening within the ad account. How can it be that on the top of funnel campaign, that PMAX campaign, the total ROAS is 3.68, but the NC ROAS is only 0.97? The answer is simple. The top of funnel campaign, again, isn't really a top of funnel campaign. What we see here are the search terms within the PMAX campaign. Now, we've gotten lucky because the brand is big enough that the search category is the brand itself. Like, we can actually see the branded search terms show up here. But if you have a small brand, you might not be able to even see this. That's because the branded search terms aren't searched for often enough for the PMAX to register that as a search term in the search term results, right? So what we see here at the very top is the conversion value from the PMAX campaign, which totals around 23,000, of which 21,000 consists of branded search terms. That's 91%. So 91% of the revenue on the top of funnel campaign came from people actively searching for the brand. You cannot consider that as top of funnel revenue. These people already know your brand. Most likely, these people are returning customers, or they are actively engaged middle and bottom of funnel audiences. Again, they were wasting a lot of money on clicks and impressions of people who would have converted regardless of that particular ad. Just for clarity's sake, a branded search term is someone typing in your brand name. Let's take the North Face, for example, like the clothing brand. Anytime someone explicitly types in the North Face on Google, that's considered a branded search term. We'll get back to branded search terms in a moment. After making the necessary adjustments to the top of funnel campaign, the average CPA on that top of funnel PMAX campaign dropped from 15.3 to 3.2. And more importantly, the new customer return on ad spend increased from an unprofitable 0.97 return on ad spend to a very profitable NC ROAS of 4.02. On the top of funnel campaign, we only lost £530 in new customer revenue while cutting the ad spend by as much as £2,400. That means £2,400 we cut in ad spend only generated £530 in new customer revenue. All the while, our customer order net sales remained level as we previously showed you guys, right? Again, Google is used as a paid acquisition channel. Your top of funnel campaign should be geared towards new customer acquisition. You strive to only pay for your customer once and as little as possible for a returning order. However, to protect our Google listings from competitors who are targeting our brand name and looking to steal away our customers, we are forced to spend a very little budget on our branded search terms. If, for example, we look at a brand like Nike, competitors are looking to target search terms like black Nike shoes to steal away the traffic and customers from Nike. We protect ourselves from competitors who are looking to do this by targeting our own brand name in our bottom of funnel campaign. Google favors ads that have high click rates and that generate conversions. When people are searching for your brand, or in this example, searching for Nike, the odds are high that they want real Nike shoes and will not click on the ad of a competitor that's trying to sell his own brand on the Nike its search term. This makes the click rate and conversion rate on the actual Nike ad substantially higher than the click rate and the conversion rate on the competitor ads that are trying to sell a shoe from a different brand. This is why your bid is extremely favorable in the auction, and Google actually favors showing your ad compared to that of a competitor, and that's why you pay very, very little to serve that ad on your own branded keyword. When looking at June, the bottom of funnel spend was £760. That is high, especially considering the fact that the top of funnel campaign was already heavily targeting the branded search terms. Remember that 91% of the conversion value on the top of funnel campaign was actually generated on branded search terms. In other words, people who were typing in the exact brand name. In essence, £3,800 per month went to targeting people who were actively searching for this brand. These people would have converted anyway in 90% or 95% of the cases. So a large portion of that spend was just completely wasted. Now, what is the ideal setup and spend to protect your brand name in a bottom of funnel campaign? Well, all you really need to focus on is your search impression share. This is the percentage of times you show up for a search term. If this on your own brand is over 80%, you're good to go. You can usually do this very, very cheap. And what we can see here are the search term results for the bottom of funnel campaign. We can see that whenever someone searches for our brand, the impression share is 99%. So we're showing up each and every time, and the click-through rate is extremely high. In other words, we are protecting the branded keyword more than sufficiently. Now, let's filter the results by brand name. What we now see is the spend that's actively going towards protecting our brand name. And what we can see is that only £240 went to our branded keywords, and that £240 generated a total of £13,000 in reported revenue. So, if only £240 went to branded keywords, what happened to the remainder of the spend, right? Because we have a lot more spend going somewhere else. And we can find that out by excluding our branded search term in this search term results page, right? And what we can see is that £850 was spent on non-branded keywords, which only generated £13,500 with a return on ad spend of only 1.57. which again is very unprofitable. Basically, the agency was prospecting and wasting its budget on the bottom of funnel campaign. They had their whole strategy kind of backwards, right? So let's recap what we found. In June and July, £6,000 was spent on the top of funnel campaign to generate roughly £23,000 in revenue as reported by Triple Whale. The conversion value from this PMAX campaign, according to Google, also totals 23,000, of which 21,000 consist of branded search terms. This means that 91% of their top of funnel revenue came from the branded search terms. In actuality, their new customer cost per acquisition was £54 and their new customer return on ad spend only 1.08, wasting £6,000 in 2 months on a so-called top of funnel campaign. Their bottom of funnel campaign, on top of that $6,000 that was already geared towards retargeting, spent another £1,500 on retargeting in June and July, but only 20% of that went to retargeting, and the remainder 80% or £900 was spent on non-branded keywords, which only generated £1,300 for a ROAS of 1.57, which again is very unprofitable. So they were wasting a lot of ad spend. That's the whole point. So mind you that they only had a profit margin of 0.5%, all because of these inefficiencies. In essence, they were spending all of their budget on retargeting customers who were actively looking for their brand. Now, let's get into part 2. Let's look at the changes I made in September to go from profiting just £840 on average to profiting £8,300. So a 940% increase. First off, I cut all the bad spending on Facebook and Google, cutting down the ad spend from $20,000 in July to $5,000 in September. Most of the ads did not acquire any customers or were acquiring customers at a loss. That's why I had to cut a lot of it. And by adding exclusions in the Facebook account and limiting the spend and over attribution in Google on branded search terms, I was able to drop the new customer cost per acquisition from £22 roughly to £8 or £8.20. This in turn increased the new customer return on ad spend from a 2.6 to a very profitable 7.6. Now, it's important to track what these changes did to our new customer revenue and the returning customer revenue. The £15,000 cut in ad spend or bad spend, that was not meant as a pun, caused no difference in returning order revenue. However, as to be expected, and I want to be very transparent in this, the new customer revenue did decrease. All right, it went from 52,000 to 38,000, a £14,000 decrease. This is actually a great sign because if I cut my ad spend by 15,000 and my new customer revenue only falls by 14,000, that means on that ad spend I had a return of only 0.9 in new customer revenue. Mind you that for this brand to break even on an acquisition, we needed a 2.2 new customer return on ad spend. So to spend 15,000 and only gain 14,000, which is like a 0.9 return on ad spend, is like burning cash. By cutting all the wasted ad spend, I was able to go from profiting almost nothing. Like remember the example of a month where we did like £123,000 in sales with that former agency to only profiting like £49 off of that. We went to doing 89,000 in sales and £8,300 in profit, which is a 940% increase on average on profit, all thanks to cutting the wasted ad spend. All right, so we were profiting a lot more and not even doing that much more. We were just doing it better. So remind yourself to add exclusions and only pay for a customer once. Now, for the last part 3, our bonus part, what did we change in the release strategy to hit the highest revenue weekend outside of Black Friday, Cyber Monday ever? As a clothing brand, they were dropping new designs every 2 weeks. Relative to other clothing brands, that is already a lot. Now, when we hopped on board, the owner was considering dropping a new design every week. We could understand the logical reasoning behind this, as every drop generated cash. However, this could deplete the demand in the existing audiences, and going from every 2 weeks to every week meant that we'd only have half the time to design and promote each drop. Now, we like to put time, focus, and energy into our work. So we were actually leaning towards one big drop every month, where the build-up would be higher per drop. To get relevant data in order to make this decision, we decided to ask our customers, or the customers of the client, however you want to see it, what they wanted. When we sent out a customer survey asking them how they felt about our drops, they actually told us they prefer lesser drops with bigger ranges. As these surveys came in and the owner started to see results from working with us, he was excited to do one big drop per month. Unlike former launches, we built this one up properly, sending out preview emails 2 weeks in advance and running preview ads 1 week in advance. Our engaged audiences were more than just aware of this launch, and this is extremely important, they were excited about the launch. Mind you, this brand is doing 6 figures a month and they have a pretty big customer base. Often when they did a drop, the stock would run out and the visitors would not be able to spend money with the brand, an opportunity cost. With this bigger range drop, they had more designs in this drop. This meant that even if the main design went out of stock, there would still be a lot of other new designs to pick up. In essence, with one very big build up, we could drive more people to the site and have more stock available, and more new stock is also like a good emphasis on that, for them to buy from, ultimately beating the one drop per 2 week strategy. And the proof is clearly depicted in this graph. For the 2 week strategy to be more profitable, every 2 weeks there has to be a peak at least half the size of the huge peak on the right. There's only one that comes even close to that. All other peaks are not even close to a quarter of that, meaning we are profiting about 30% more from drops than we were previously doing. And this is not just that one drop, but just averaged out over that month, we were doing 30% more in profit or revenue, or however you want to see it, from doing one drop versus 2 drops in that month. If you're wondering about doing a drop, I'd invite you not to think in terms of how many drops you do, because if you do too many promotions, you deplete the demand in your current audiences. I would, however, invite you to think of your audiences as a pool of demand. If you do one drop per month, that drop might generate you £30,000. But that doesn't mean that if you do a drop every day, you'll generate 30,000 every day. The art of doing a drop is about the offer and the excitement. You can only entice someone to visit your site or purchase from you every X amount of days. You want to be very strategic about this and make sure that when they do visit your site, they are super excited so that they actually purchase from you and spend more money. The more excited they are, the more they spend. And the better your offer is, the more you make. Don't just do drops, but be really intentional about them. Have a really big build up to them so that when you hit their inbox with that email and that offer, they actually get excited and are ready to pull out their wallets, right? You want to maximize it every time you hit the inbox and make it as exciting as profitable, as possible. Now, I hope you've enjoyed this in-depth case study. As we're moving into Black Friday, Cyber Monday, I'm actually increasing the ad spend for this business as we speak. And I'm acquiring as much customers as possible right now so that I can maximize the Black Friday, Cyber Monday sales. If you are interested in seeing a sequel to this case study where I show the Black Friday, Cyber Monday strategy, the offers that we're using, the media buying tactics, and the overall profits, then hit the subscribe button. That's it for this case study. Thank you for watching. I hope it's been valuable, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.